Today is Chulin Daf Ayin Zayin. We're still holding Ayin Vav on the base, and we're starting off quickly with two things about Tzumas Hagidim. We're discussing the Machlekes Rashi and the Ravid about where the Tzumas Hagidim is. Rashi says that the Tzumas Hagidim is in the back over here behind legs, right? These three tendons. And the Ravid says, what do you mean? They're not Tzomsin, they're not together. Look at it, they're not together. They don't get together at any point of the Ravid. Must be the Tzumas Hagidim is in the front. And he teaches that's the Gemara. When the Gemara says Legav Labar, Rashi says Legav Labar means outside of this bone or inside of this bone. So the Ravid no. Legav Labar is behind the foot, and Legav is over here. And that's what whenever the Gemara talks about Tzomsin, it means the inside. That's how the Ravid learns, right? Now we were just about to say the Rosh. The Rosh is Ma'amah Shekanoi. He brings down the Shita of Rashi, and then he brings down the Shita of the Ravid, and then he says. So the Rosh, the Ravid Haitzioi Misvaras Liboy Umitoich Pulpuloi Samach Amaris Einov Umishmash Yadav. What he's coming from his Egin and Svaris, the Hikshis Atrefis, the Hitrefis Akasha, the Cholaka Kabbalosai Shel Rashi Shi Mikubelas Le Miraboisav Goine Oilam Bikabalas Chachme Hashas. Ella Vadai Dav Pashu Shetum Sagidim Hu Be'achutz. V'yadua Hu Shekayach Behema V'chaskasa V'chiyusa Toli Begidim Shel B'chutz V'alzeh Le'nistapik Shel Mameira V'chacham. Yeah, as I sagt the Rosh. Yeah. Lamaisa, what's the teretz to the Ravid's kasha? What's the teretz to the Ravid's kasha? So zokt the Welt, and it's brought down a lot of the acharim we showed yesterday. One eitzah. That the eitzah is like this. That it doesn't mean these two, even though the pashtus of Rashi is the two small ones means these, and this is the big one. No, if you look at this one really could be split up also. And Memela, that's what it means, right? We showed a picture from what's called it. If you want to see a picture, 1 second, I'll show you a picture of that as well. 1 second. Say that the Yad Yehuda and the Das Torah want to say that it means this, that that the Tzumas Hagidim is not this whole thing plus this. No, Tzumas Hagidim is this thing itself could be split into 3 parts. That's the shtickle Torah that they want to say in Rashi. Yeah? Okay. But the Tzumas Hagidim, like the Ravid, is in the front. So the Shaila is, but Avada, the Mashmoyis is that Rashi is talking about, like what we said, the first Lashon, that it's the first. So the Shaila is, how are we going to be Miyashiv that the Tzumas Hagidim is these 3, and they're not Tzomsin, right? That's the Shaila. So I want to propose a pshat, which you could see, and I can't prove it 100%, but I asked the Shoichet, and he said it's for sure emes. And I asked AI, and it was also masking, that this is the Metzias. Now the Metzias is like this. Everybody looks at, when you look at this thing, you look at it after it's dead, after the animal is dead. So this thing is relaxed, and right, and what you get is essentially what you're looking at is essentially this, right? Here it's already relaxed, everything's relaxed, and when it's relaxed, this and this is totally separated. However, I'll show you that when the foot is pulled back, so this thing extends, and then this and this touches. L'mashal. Let me see if I can show you. I'll show you a few illustrations that show that it's pretty clear. 1 second. First of all, look at over here. If you look at these 2 pictures over here, this is when it's bent, and this is how it looks when you cut it. It looks like this. It's far from here to this, right? This to this is pretty far. But however, when you move it, when the animal moves his foot even a little bit, here it's not. The animal is not completely. The animal's dead, right? It's not pulled back. He's not extending. He's not pulling his muscle, and it's just relaxed. But if you have the weight of this, it already gets much closer. And then if you extend it and you're pulling this muscle, so then it holds mamish together. I have a picture of it. 1 second, let me show you. Here's a picture that I made, shtickle AI, but here's a picture which shows this concept, which is that when it's bent, so this thing is not pulling against anything, so it's not against the tendons. But when the animal pulls this thing and it gets taut, very taut, so then it gets close to the other gidim. Now you can't, they don't have the thing that's around the gidim, so they don't look together, but avada, they're running in next to each other. So Bekitzer, the teretz is like this, like Rashi. Avada, right? Rashi is talking about the back ones, and he's talking about all three back tendons. Right? I frack the Riva, they're not together. The Teretz says the Riva was looking at a dead animal. He was looking at an animal after it was already geschochten, when it's not standing. But when it's standing, then they taka do come together. That Simpson, they come together. But I want to be moisif now here, a very important lumdis over here. And this is very gishmak, because ba'etzem it's really a shverkeit in the sugya. There's one shverkeit that's misvara very hard to understand. I wanted a side by side, but I can't find the side by side. But I'll show you this thing. The Gemara said before. The first Gemara said that the tumas agidim is what? It's either the one man number says is the argama is this bone ula bar outside, and the next one said the argama ula gav, right? It comes out murdig as far as afuchas. One man number says it's only this, and one man number says it's only this. So now I'm like that. Yeah, what's the pshat in this? Such a plea of the animal's life is absolutely only over here, nowhere else. Not over here at all. The other one says it's only over here, not over here. What's the tzachta? So I want to say like this, I'm worried to go on this. And I want to say like this. The Makim Sha'agidim Tzomson. What happened now? Why did it stop? Mokim Shagidim Tzomson, let's go back. Yeah? Mokim Shagidim Tzomson, what? It's not just a place. It happens to be. You want to know where it is? Chazal said it's called a Tzom Shagidim, so we're going to find the place. No. That's the Hezber. Also, that's the explanation. What's the explanation? Because we're going to see, and we see this in Chazal, that basar regenerates itself. Something that's basar regenerates itself. Something that's not basar does not have the ability to regenerate itself. That's the word, right? So the point is, Soimes Hagidim is where the Gidim come next to each other. Since it's Gidim against Gidim, so if one of them is gonna get nifsak, it's not gonna be able to be. It's not gonna be able to heal. It's a very mistabedik gazach. The word is that a gid against a gid, if it's rubbing against each other, it doesn't have a way to ever heal. The Amar that says that it's the Gama Ula Gav, he says there's no problem if it's just Gidim against each other. But the problem is a Gid against the bone. But they're both saying because this is an area where there's a Gid and there's no Basar. That's the Nakuda here. That's why. So it's not such Svaras Afuchas. What's unique about this area is that here is an area where there's tendons and there's no Basar. And like the Gemara says, when it's called Basar, it's no problem. Why? Because Basar regenerates itself. Something that's not Basar doesn't have the ability to regenerate. That's the Chilik of Din over here and over here. But the point is the same Nakuda that we're talking about what has the ability to regenerate. That's Nakuda number 2 that I wanted to say about this, about these Tzem Sagidim. And now I just want to say, la'alacha, what do? I think we mentioned this yesterday. La'alacha, we paskin that we're makbid on both. We're makbid Tzai on the Ravid and Tzai on Rashi on both of them, and we would just miyashiv maybe shitas Rashi. What's the pshat in the Tzumas Hagidim in the back? Okay. Now there's another. Now what's by Oifus? By Oifus is very interesting because what's interesting about Oifus is that recently there were tremendous breakouts of Tzumas Hagidim problems. Mamish tremendous problems to the point that there have been shipments, 90% of the birds had Tzumas Hagidim problems. Mamish tremendous problems. And the reason they say why there's Tzumas Hagidim problems by Oifus so much is three. First of all, there's there's two viruses that affect the Tzumas Hagidim by Oifus, right? One of them they get, I forgot the names of them. Two different viruses that could come through, and one of them and the third problem they say is that today the breeders are not they they're breeding it. They want these birds to be extremely strong and big, and therefore what ends up happening is that the birds grow very, very big, bigger than their legs could handle, and they end up snapping. And the Tzumas Hagidim ends up snapping. So it's very, very important what they do l'maisa. They send down mishlachas to try to make sure that they're not getting birds that are a problem. And in Eretz Yisrael, they check the Tzumas Hagidim on all the birds when they shecht. Okay, that is the Gemara. Which Tzumas Hagidim do you check? They check. I think 5 in the front and the rest in the back. There's a whole shmooze if you do the front and the back by Oifus. Also, l'maisa by Oifus, there's 2 Masakidim all the way around. It's a whole shmooze. We're not going to be married about that. We have to go and catch up on the Gemara. Let's go weiter. Zok the Gemara. What's it called? The hack joint. I think it's called the hack joint. I'm pretty sure it's called the hack joint. Yeah. What? I guess I missed up. I forgot to turn back on this video. This is not working. Anyway, Bekitzer. Yeah, we're moving on. Zok the Gemara weiter. Maskiv lo Rav Nachman. Maskiv lo Rav Nachman l'shmo. Yeah, okay, that's the Gemara. Maskler of Nachman Shmuel Yoimru Ever Mimena Mutel be'ashba umuteres. What's the kasha? That Loit Shmuel. What's going to be? What's the question? How could Shmuel say that when it broke, when the leg broke and Roiv Basar is missing? In the middle of the bone, you're going to say the behemoth is muteris, even though there's an aver in the garbage. Aver mutal ba'ashba umuteris, and the animal is still not a treifa. I believe Rav Nachman, Rav Nami yemu aver mimena mutal ba'ashba umuteris. You have the same thing in Rav. Who cares, right? If there's something, Rav Acha bar Rav Huna took this question literally. It was mashma that the problem is you can't have something in the garbage and it should be also and it should be muteris. If you have part of it in the garbage, then it has to be that the animal is not kosher, right? You can't have muteris. That's impossible. He took that as literal. So he asked the question. Rav also has such a case. Why? Because if there's a part of the hoof or the akuva and kesim aroish, the bottom bone was broken, that Rav says that if it's Roiv Basar is missing, it's going to blind Avim Mutotal and it's not kosher. And right, so you have an Avim Mimena Mutal Ba'ashba and still the rest of the animals mutter. The question was, how could you have an Ava that gives life, an animal that could make this animal into a treifa, and it's sitting in the garbage, I don't know, because it's usher, because we said behema muteris and aver is usher. That can't be. So they sent from Eretz Yisrael that the halacha is like Rav. That what? That it's taka usher. Hey, Then they will and they said the halach is like Shmuel. That what? That the whole behemoth is a treifa. The aver atmoi mitaba ben basa. And not only that, the aver becomes a aver mitotal. Must have the chizdom. Frekt, right? Frekt. Oh, if it's metalto b'masa, why should it be a problem with metalto b'masa? It was nishchat. The teretz is that it blives what? If we're going to say that shchita is a nipol, and since shchita is a nipol, the pshat is that it becomes eva menachai. Frekting more maser Rav Chizda loyim tearta from the Brisa. The Brisa says loyim tearta shchita streifa oisa v'esa eva medudul ba dava shagufa. So the Brisa said, right? Tetayis so oba dava shagufa. That was the Brisa, the shakavatayah that we had remain in the chachamim. Bottom line is over there it says tiharta shchitas treifa and eva medudul ba, that the shchita of eva medudul ba is going to be metired from the vela. So v'isa shchita is not oisa nipol. So how could you ask a question that it's? How could you say halacha that Rav's going to say we hold shchita is not oisa nipol? So Rabbah says, one second. First of all, Amalei Rabbah, Haduria Pirchi Lamali. Why are you asking a question from Pirchi, from shver things? In other words, because it was a brisa. Why are you asking from a brisa which is not mafurish? Why are you asking from mafurish Mishnah? A mafurish Mishnah that's clear that what the shchita is not oisa nipol. Why? Because it says nishchita behema hochshiru b'damel divramer Reb Shimon lo hochshiru. Yeah. So, and what do we see from there? We see that hochshiru b'damel, that it's that if the behemoth is nichshir, it's hochshiru b'damel, and it doesn't become tamei. Reb Shimon lo hochshiru. It's not hochshiru, but akapanim it's not shchita oisa nipol. Amalei masisa nikel achinan. The Mishnah we could be doicha like the Gemara was matcha. If you remember the Gemara earlier, that the Gemara was matcha that right? That it's only by basa. The Gemara was matcha. Mashenkin the brisa you can't be matcha. Ki salukam zera ashkel Rabbi Yirmiyah the asvik amalo shmaitza amalei yiyashav v'chein tergema ayich bebavel. You're right. Rabbi Yirmiyah was a Talmud of Rav, and he said over the shtickle Torah of Rav that he asked it. So Reb Zera told him, "Yiyashav v'chein tegem Aryech beBavel." Yeah, Shmuel said like that also. Aryech was the melech of Bavel, which is Shmuel that because he was the one that paskined Bamanis. Frekting more Aryech mani Shmuel v'amiflik polig. Shmuel argues everything. What a hard to be Shmuel legabe the Rav. Shmuel was chayzem. Zokt the Gemara weiter. That's that Gemara. Now we're going to discuss a new shmuz. So what's that negeya? That is mamish negeya every single time when you have a problem when you have a bird and you have the pulka which with a break, that is a nishbar etzem. And you have to make sure, right? That's not a problem. That's not. If there's a break in the pulka, even if you didn't have a even if it wasn't Yatzel Chutz, if it's just broken and it stayed as is, right? We're going to see in the Gemara soon a case of Yatzel Chutz where we're left the flesh and the what's called it. But until now we're talking about just it stayed as is, but it's a break, and that shmuz will have a problem. We paskin even that it's treifa even from the what's called the shank bone. So the Gemara weiter. Torah Rabbanon. Nishbara etzem v'yotzel l'chutz. Now this is something else. It broke, and it's yotzel l'chutz, and it's a brisa. The brisa says nishbara etzem if it broke v'yotzel l'chutz. Now and it's exposed. It came out. Im or ubasar chayfenes rubai. If you haven't remember this lashon, im or ubasar, the skin and the meat chayfenes rubai mutter. Im lav asar. If it's not chayfenes rubai, it's not. The kama rubai. What's rubai? Ki asar avdim yam Rabbi Yochanan roiv oivyoy. Now, Rashi has a very novel pshat in what Rav Oivyoy and Rav Kefoy is because it's going to be Mavur the Gemara. They could have one without the other, etc. There's going to be problems. So Rashi says like this: Rav Oivyoy means the Rav of the thickness of the bone, and Rav Kefoy means the Rav of the circumference of the skin. Yeah, Rav Avi and Rav Kefa are not talking about the same thing. Let's say Rav Papa's halacha. Rav Papa hilchach beina and Rav Avi beina Rav Kefa. Now, what are we talking about over here? What's this Rav Basar Rav Kefa? So there is a different halakha from Tosis, but it's so late we're not going to say Tosis. We're just going to say we didn't even get to today's blot. We're just going to say we'll just show a picture of what Rashi's shita in Rav Avi and Rav Kefa is. 1 second. Rav Ovi and Rav Kefa, the Shita is Rashi. Yeah? Rav Ovi means I have a very, very small, yeah? The basar is kayam all around, right? A small little hole, but lemaisa, the bone is peeking out the Rav Ovi of the bone. You see that? That's Rav Ovi of the bone. Even though the hekif of the meat, the flesh, is intact all around. Yeah? And the reverse is Roiv Kefay, which is that this is the not Roiv Kefay. Roiv Kefay means the Roiv of the flesh, but you can have a Roiv Oivyoy that's not Roiv Kefay. Meaning, here's a Roiv Oivyoy. I have Roiv of the Oivy of the bone, but there's a very, very small little hole in the meat, right? And still it's going to be in this case you could have. Later man the Amar Roiv Oivyoy is a problem. This will be a problem. Later man the Roiv Kefay. No, the Maisa, most of the meat is still intact, and you can have the reverse. Also, Rashi explains you can have Roiv Kefay as well, right? Roiv Kefay is most of the bone, but the Maisa, very little of most of the flesh is open, but very little bone is exposed. That's the That's the mahalach like Rashi. We're gonna leave it at Rashi because we don't have time for Shitas Tosis. Tosis has a whole mahalach how you could have it, a whole fancy mahalach depending on the shape of the bone. We don't have time. So to more weiter. Or harehu kebasar. That since we need that the basar should be covered, that the bone should be covered by basar, or harehu kebasar. That means that the or could take the place of the basar. Hamalei Rav Nachman leula v'leimamar or mitzdarif lebasar. Meaning, the Brisa earlier said nishbar atzav v'yatzal lechotz im or basar chayfenes rubai mutter. That I need. The simple reading of the Brisa is that I need Sai R and Basar to be Chayfa. So if you have R, it can't take place of the Basar. How's it going to take place in the Basar? I need the R and the Basar. Yeah, V'leimamar or mitzdarif lebasar. What do you say? Or harehu kebasar. Da or ubasar katani. Amalei anan or oy basar taninan. We have a different version of the Brisa. Our version says or basar taninan. Ikadami amar ula amar b'yechinon. Or mitzdarif lebasar. Taka, the or is mitzdarif lebasar, meaning that you need both. Amalei ramachman leula v'leimamar or mashlam lebasar. L'chumra, meaning that I need both. The mashmois of Aru Basar or Mashlam Basar is not or mitzvah basar is you have a little of this and a little of this. No, there should be rubai basar and a little bit skin on it. Amalei I of the diadana. That who bagos the have a beirav yitzchak to or mitzvah lebasav. He had a little or and a little basar and it was good. V'asal kamed Rabbi Yechon v'achsharei. Amalei baguzla kamit. Where you bring a riot from the case of baguzla. Baguzla is a bird. Baguzla the rachich shani. Why? Because since its skin is so soft, it has a din like basar. So now we're going to talk about this concept of having gidin rachim that have a din like basar. What should we worry about? We have a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Legabi Korban Pesach, that a person has to take part in the Korban Pesach. What happens if somebody was not offered a portion of meat? He's only offered a portion of these tendons, that they're very soft, but they're soifei lahakshes. They're eventually gonna harden. So we have machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish if that's called basar or it's not called basar. If it's not called basar, you're not nimnin aleim bepesach. That is the Gemara. So now we have the same kind of a question. We had gidim rachim. We had these tendons that were very soft at this point, but they're soifer lahakshis. They're eventually going to get hard. And the question is, do they have it in like basar, and they could be counted as a covering for the bone? Again, this concept that we have that bones are that meat is something that replenishes it. That's the svara that we started in the beginning of the sugya, right? And therefore gidim would be have it in like basar, and it's and they cover it. Mashenkein gidim aren't good. So Rabbah said, what should I worry? What should I worry about? First of all, Rabbi Yochanan holds that gidim that are sefer lahakshais on nimnin, meaning that it has a din basar. The oy that terech hasam moenim shal Yisrael. Yeah. Now Rav Papa's question is going to be obvious, but it's such an obvious question that the Achrayim Muchazach, what was the havamina Rabbi Yochanan? Amalei Rav Papa the Rabbah, Reb Shimon bar Lakish, the Surah Daraisa Vat Amrit Lemay Nechishlu. Yeah. What do you mean? We have Issa Daraisa over here. Question of a treifa of an animal. The animal has a break, and we don't know if it's covered sufficiently. And you're going to go say Lemay Nechishlu, right? But the question is, but the fact of that, what was his lashon of Atayr Chasam Moenim Shal Yisrael? Why is it negayah to say Atayr Chasam Moenim Shal Yisrael? So I would just say, slightly different than Teres Chaim. Slightly different than Teres Chaim. We just say Kipshuta, just to be able to move on. That the word is Rabbah was saying Lemay Nechishlu. In other words, that obviously Rabbi Yochanan, the Allah is like Rabbi Yochanan. And therefore, I have nothing to worry about. You want me to be machmir, stam techaparai, another shita? No, since we pass Rabbi Yochanan, I'm not going to be machmir. That's what I think would be a pshat in the Gemara. But the bottom line is, Zok the Gemara, but he said that what? But Rav Papa asked Rabbah, he said, what do you mean, Rav Shimon ben Lakish? He asked him about Rav Shimon ben Lakish. And Rabbah, ishtik, was quiet. Why is he quiet? Why? Because he asked him for a Rish Lakish? We don't pass like Rish Lakish. That the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Lakish only in 3 times, but everywhere else it's not the halacha like Reb Shimon ben Lakish. So what's the big deal? Okay, so Reb Shimon ben Lakish doesn't know like that, but we don't pass like Reb Shimon ben Lakish. What's the problem? We know that Rabbi Yochanan was chayzer. We're not going to go through this Gemara. It's actually a Gemara later on in our Roitev. The Gabei the Reb Shimon Lakish. The Amalei al tikni teini beloshin yachid ani shaynoisa. There's a conversation in the Gemara later on, which is talking about also about or shesoifei lahakshos. And over there, Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish asked the reverse question from a Mishnah to Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan said, "Leave me alone. Don't ask me from there because I learned that Mishnah as a das yachid, but Avada Rabbi Yochanan holds that we hold that Paskin, now that he was chayzer, he holds that Sefer Lahakshes is not going to have a din like basar, and therefore over here it's also not going to have a din like basar. Now Tosfos and Rashi argue with one nekuda. When he says B'loshin Yachid Ani Shoyna Isai, and we had this machlekes Rashi and Tosfos a few times, that Rashi says B'loshin Yachid Ani Shoyna Isai is just a way of saying that I hold it's a das Yachid, not that I'm changing the girsa of the Mishnah. However, Tosfos says that wouldn't be enough because Tosfos says a raya that there are times where we know it's a das Yachid and it's still a problem for Rabbi Yochanan. So it's still a problem for Rabbi Yochanan that holds halachas stam Mishnah. So Shitas Tosfos is that whenever it says B'loshin Yachid Ani Shoyna Isai means that Rabbi Yochanan had a girsa in the Mishnah divrei Rab Shimon. Anyway, that's one nekuda. Now, and Tosfos asks a different kasha. How do we know which incident happened first? The al takniteni b'loshin yachid ani sheinoisa, which happened over here in Arva Roitev, and the machlokes of machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish in Psachim. The way the Gemara over here is going is that we had first the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish in Psachim of if sefer lahakshis. Over there, Rabbi Yochanan held that what that Sefer Lahakshes becomes Dina Kabasa, and he's Nimna Leim Bepesach. But then later on, we had the story where he was Chayzer, and that's where Al Takriteri Shablash Niachran Ishayah, which is the Gemara in our Varaitiv, which happened later on. That's how our Gemara goes. Fraktosis, who says maybe the story happened out the reverse. That first we had the story of Al Takriteri, and then afterwards Rabbi Yochanan was Chayzer the other way. That is Tosis' Kasha, and Tosis' Teretz is that Lamaisa, it's mistaber that if we know that there was a Chazar or Rabbi Yochanan, it's mistaber that he was Chayzer to Rish Lakish. In Ha'arva Roitiv, there's no machloikis, so it's not mistaber to say that if Rabbi Yochanan was Chayzer, we know two incidents. And one case, we know he was obviously Chayzer because they don't stem the two Rabbi Yochanans, right? So it's more mistaber to say that he was Chayzer in Psachim because over there's a Rish Lakish, and he was and he was Chayzer and he was masking to Rish Lakish is more mistaber than to say that Rabbi Yochanan was Chayzer away. Was first he held like our varietive, and then afterwards he went and he was chayzer to argue with Rish Lakish. That's less mistaber. Sagt Imar vaytem hau nishbar etzem v'yatzal lechutz dishtakel kurtisa mine. There was a nishbar etzem v'yatzal lechutz. Okay, so it was a nishbar etzem v'yatzal lechutz. It broke and it came out, sticking out, but it wasn't a problem because it didn't have a problem. It didn't have a problem of Roiv Oivyo or Roiv Kefir, so it would have been good. But we had a question that maybe there's a new problem. What's the problem? That the shtakel kurtisimine, a piece of the bone fell off as well. Oh, maybe this is worse. So they came in front of Abaya. Abaya didn't know. So Shaya Tlosa Wrigley. This is a Gemara. We had this a few times. Shaya Tlosa Wrigley means that he brought this question up. 3 times. Every time there was a by a regel, and all the Talmidei Chacham came together. What do you call it? Whatever they had a big what's it called a big what? Yeah. And Lamaisa and what do we call it? I don't know. Anyway, because it's some kind of a yachikala, and three golem. And it took three regalim, and by the third regal, somebody said, "Amar le Rav Ada bar Masna." Rav Ada bar Masna says, "You know what? Zilka made the Rava braid Rav Yosef Bachama the Charifa Sakine. He has a sharp knife. Because he's good in learning. Also Kabe Amar Michti, and he said he's medayik like this. Michti Nishbar Etzav Yetzel Lechutz Tanan. It said we had a brisa. The whole halach of Nishbar Etzav Yetzel Lechutz is talking about Nishbar Etzav Yetzel Lechutz. Mali Nafal Mali Isa. It doesn't make a difference as long as it's Rav Basar Kayam, it's fine, and if not, and it doesn't matter if it's, and it doesn't matter if what, and it's irrelevant if a piece of the bone fell off as well. Amalei Ravida L'Rava mislaket mahu. What happens if you need the Roiv HaKefer, right? Now the question is, in the Roiv HaKefer of the Basar, but it's not all in one place. Meaning you have a few different pieces of Basar, but they're separated, but you still have Roiv. Is that enough? Or it has to be all in one go? That's one question. Misraises Mahu. Misraises is if it was thinned out, meaning it's not so thick, it's not its full thickness. Or mismas meis ma'u. What happens if it got sick? It's starting to decay. Hey, chidami mismas meis. What's it called mismas meis? That would be a problem. If the roife, the veterinarian, would come and cut it out, so then that's already called a mismas meis, where we would have a question if it's good. What happens if this piece, the meat that's over the break, if there's a hole also, nikev ma'u. Or niklaf ma'u. What happens if it's peeled away from the bone? Niklaf ma'u. Nistak ma'u. So Rashi's changed the girsa. First of all, nistak. First of all, nikev one. Now then we declare about nistak, right? And then we're going to go to niklaf. Why do we change the girsa to niklaf? If you see that niklaf comes last. Why? Because the fourth question is really imtin tzalaima on niklaf. Why? Because nikev is if there's a hole, so you have the basa that's around this break is protecting it. Question is, if it gets a hole, maybe it's less protective. Or nistak is if it gets a slice. Now niklaf is if it got peeled off from the bone. Now that's one question. And then the next question is only imtim tzalayma. If niklaf is a problem, so as soon as the flesh is separated from the bone, it's already a problem. So then the next question is not going to be a question at all. But if it's not a problem, it's no problem that it's niklaf. It's no problem. The basar is covering over the break, and that's okay. That's no problem, even if they're separated. They're not attached anymore. But now, nito shlish atachtamahu. What happens if a third of the thickness of the basar was removed, but the bottom the shlish that's closest to the bone? Ma'u tashmad ma'ulam Rabbi Yochanan or hareu kibasar. Merdigaraya. Allah said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that or hareu kibasar, that even if the basar is missing, or is good enough. What do you mean or is already good enough? Or is never touching the bone. The teretz is that it was that the basar that's in between the bone and the or was already removed, and it's still good. So it's no problem. That was the Gemara wanted to say. So the Gemara, no, it's nishkeraya. Dilma dekana mashcha didei. Maybe when Rabbi Yochanan was talking in a case in a place on the bone, like at the back of the Tumas Hagidim, where there is no flesh, there's only skin. And what we're saying is that the skin regraft itself in its place where mashcha didei, the place the kana mashcha, the skin acquired didei its place. That in other words, that it was a place that never had basar, and now there's a basar that's covering over it, and now it's attached. And maybe it's reattached, and we don't have a raya from Ulam Rabbi Yochanan to our shayla of nitol shlish hatachten if it's going to be good. Amar Rav Ashi Gavir ben Rav Papi. What happens if it's a round cut? If it's a round cut, it's harder to heal. So what will be in such a case? It was nikta kimin tabas. And we were able to be patient from this. I asked Chachamim ula roifim. Very, very important makar. Yeah, that this is a Gemara that's very, very clear. Right, that we could ask. We do ask we do ask the experts. However, we have to make sure this Mishabur is very important. Is very, very, very madgish that we have to make sure that they're Yarei Shamayim, because if they're not Yarei Shamayim, we can't take their word for it. But Akapanim, we do take we do take their expertise. V'amru misartoi be'etzem umala rucham. If there's this round hole, so this round hole, taka is harder for it to heal. But if you take a etzem, another bone, not the bone that's broken, another bone, and you scratch it in the place where on the edges, it will bleed again, and it will be able to fuse and close up. And Memela, it's good. So to Yomara, Avo Parzel, only take an etzem to open it up. Parzel, don't take metal, because Mizra Zarif, that already somehow that's gonna somehow make the edges not be able to fuse together. Amra Papa, who the kana garma didei. Yeah. When do we say that? That even if it's a round hole, which is harder to heal, it's going to be okay because there's an eitzah of Masarti Be'etzem Umala Rucha. That's only if the kana garma didei, which means that the bone reclaimed the flesh that's attached to it. In other words, if we see that it's on its way to, it's not getting more ruined and it's getting closer to healing. So then there would have been an eitzah. Obviously, we killed this animal, right? And we shechted it, and we want to know if it's a treifa. But had we left it on, we could have been Masarti Be'etzem Umala Rucha, and therefore it is fine. Let's do one more shtickle Gemara, the Mishnah. Let's run through it that we can at least go to Amud Beis, and we'll have to pick up Amud Beis tomorrow. If somebody shechs a behema and he found in it a shilya. What's a shilya? Is not a full baby, not a full grown baby. He found a what? The amniotic sac. Yeah. So this is really not something that seems very edible. So Chazal in their sarcasm, B'lashon Saginar, they say Nefesh hayafa teichlana. Somebody who's a better person and he has really very fancy cuisine, he would eat such a thing. It's really we're being sarcastic. In other words, most people are not interested in such a thing, and there's a shmooze maybe of a problem about the shaksu even. But somebody has no problem eating this, eat it, no problem. It has no problem because it's not oichel. And it has no problem with tumas nevelas, meaning that even if this animal came from a nevela, this piece would not have a problem of tumas nevelas. But the first thing we're going to see in the Reisha that the chiddush is that it's hotter b'shchita simoy. Yeah, but what happens if he already had in mind to eat it? This guy is a guy. His family they love shilyas. Now already he got a din oichel, but this is a murder galam d'shazach avaloy tumas nevelas. Even though they were mechashiv on it, and since they were mechashiv on it, it gets a din oichel, but it doesn't get a din basar. It's not basar. It's not basar. It's oichel. It's their kind of food, but it's not. It never got a din shem basar, and therefore it's not going to have tumas nevelas. Shilya sheyatzasa miktasa. If let's say a piece of the shilya comes out, even a mashu of the shilya comes out, we don't know what was inside, and we don't know. It could be that the head came out. Once shilya sheyatzu miksasa asura b'achila. Now already it's all asur b'achila. Why? Because it could be that the head was out, and if the head was out, it was already born. If it was born, so everything that's left inside is not hota because after it's born, it's not. Nothing's mut. Asur b'achila. Simin vlad beisha v'simin vlad bebehema. That the shilya is a simin that maybe there was a vlad inside. Ha mevakeres shehepila shilya. If let's say mevakeres, is a animal that never gave birth yet, and a pila shilya, it gave birth to a amniotic sac, right? So even though it didn't have a child in there, yashlichana the klavim, we could still, and this might be a suffix bechar. No problem. You can give it to the klavim. So Rashi explains, and the Gemara is going to expound on this, that the word is that we have a roiv that it's fine, because as a roiv we say that it's not a zachar, that's yumechuyev on b'chayris, and therefore you can give it to the klavim. But if let's say you had a mukdashim, meaning you can't have a pregnant oila, but you had a pregnant shlamim, and it gave birth to a shilya. So now this shilya, regardless if it's a zachar or a nekeva, it has kedusha. It has kedusha. It's kaddish. So then to cover, you can't give it to the klavim because we have a chatavulei. You have to give it. You have to bury it. The ain kaver noisab. Now once we're talking about burying it, so now it's very interesting. The ain kaver noisab beprashas drachim. They tell noisab beilam and nedake amori. Apparently, there was a mahalach to put it to bury it in the by the what's called it by the fork in the road, right, and somehow that was somehow a way, some kind of a nichush, of to somehow that would make it stop happening again, that there shouldn't be again more hapolos, right? And then the Gemara's or Toilu Noisa Be'ilim would be hanging it in a tree. You can't do the two of them. It may darkei amori. Now there's an obvious problem in this sugya. The obvious problem in the Mishnah is that the Mishnah says darkei amori. Rashi says that this was nichush. So if it's nichush, typically al nachashu. Why is the problem only al darkei amori? Of what? Of not doing like the goyim. Typically, right? Typically, the problem is al nachashu. Yeah. So, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to see a little bit more about this at the Gemara. But Tzarachin, if maybe a new Chiddush, that the whole problem of Nichush is to act upon something that was told. That the pshat is that if I would act upon it, that would be a nichush. But over here, I'm not acting upon it. I'm doing a pre. I'm doing a pre nichush. I'm putting up, hanging this up, and I'm not doing anything different. I'm not doing anything different. So it could be maybe that wouldn't be an issue of nichush. Let's just see the next shtickle Gemara, and then we'll stop here and we'll pick it up tomorrow on the bottom line. So Gemara Menani Mili Tan Rabbanon. How do we know that what? That a shilya that's nimtza in a shchuta, if you want to eat it, you could eat it. It's not a problem of Eva Menachayim. So Rashi says, Menani Mili Tan Rabbanon. Kol behemet echelu. The Rabbi says shilya. Kol behemet echelu is the Rabbi says shilya. Yachal afilu yotzesa miksasa. I would think that even if part of the shilya went out, it's still mutaris. Tamalayma oisa v'lei shilyasa. So it's a part. On one hand, we have a ribui, and on the other hand, we have a miyut, and we say that if it's yotza miksasa, it's not good. In fact, the Gemara Kasha, what do you mean? Michti ain't shilya b'lei vlad. Lama likra. What do I need a pasuk to tell you that if it's already yotza miksasa, it's not muteris? Of course not. Ain't shilya b'lei vlad. So mila it was already nil. If it's nil, it's nesa. What are we talking about over here? So Gemara cross machta ba'alma and ekanami. That was only a smachta ba'alma, but be'etzem the pasuk. All we need is the pasuk to be marba that the shilya is muteris from b'shchita simai. But that the halacha that it's that yotza miksasa it's nesra, that is mi svara, and we're going to pick it up over here on the bottom line, and we're going to have to hopefully catch up. Kol tov shkoyach.